Yeah? All right, good. I hope that was pronounced properly. Anyhow, good morning. I'm here today to talk to you about a DevOps state of mind. We're here at DevOpsDays, so I think it's good and appropriate that we get into a DevOps state of mind. My name is Nathen Harvey. You can follow me on Twitter if you like. I work at a place called Chef. How many of you have heard of Chef? Awesome. And how many of you use Chef? Can some of you lie to me? How many of you use Chef? All right, yeah, that's good. I realize where we are. We're in Raleigh. And so if you don't use Chef, it's cool. But we are here and we'll talk to you about that, but I'm not going to talk to you about Chef. That's all I'm going to say about Chef for now. I also run a podcast called The Food Fight Show. How many of you can all lie this time. How many of you listen to The Food Fight Show? Yeah, all right. I'm not going to audit you. You should lie with more confidence. How many of you listen? Yeah, it's great. That's awesome. It's so weird to do a podcast because you never think anyone is listening, and now you've proven that. Thank you. The Food Fight Show is all about, our tagline is it's where DevOps chefs do battle. The truth is we don't fight. It's a pretty congenial podcast. And we don't always talk about chefs. So if you care about DevOps, come and listen to the Food Fight Show. You can subscribe to it, I don't know, wherever you listen to podcasts, I guess. It shows up on my phone, but I don't listen to it because I was there. Anyhow, DevOps. I have the distinct pleasure and honor of being the keynote presenter at a DevOpsDays conference. That means I get to define DevOps first for everyone in the room. Because I truly believe that in this room of 350 people, I think we can come up with 400 definitions for DevOps. So I want to give you a 401st. If you believe in this particular definition, which I'm going to walk through here in just a minute, it comes from a presentation that a good friend of mine and the CTO of Chef gave a couple of years ago. But as part of that presentation, he created this GitHub repo that is called the Chef Style of DevOps Kung Fu. And it really just lays out a bunch of practices and principles and a definition for what DevOps is. And it doesn't matter if you use Chef or not. If you believe in this as a definition, if you believe in some of the principles and practices espoused within that presentation, you can become a practitioner. You can join our school with DevOps. And the way you do so, of course, is with a PR to the README. And it's super easy. And don't worry, we don't have a really stringent code review process. We expect that you know how to spell your name, and we'll accept the pull request. So what is DevOps? DevOps is a cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experiences of its practitioners. That's what DevOps is. So first, it's a cultural and professional movement. DevOps is not a tool. You cannot go out into the world and maybe go to our table and say, hey, chef, we're undergoing a DevOps transformation where I work, so I'd like to purchase 32 units of DevOps, please. That's not how it works. We will not sell you 32 units of DevOps. Now, if you tell us that in your transformation you expect to grow and you want 32 units this year and maybe 100 next year, then we'll have a conversation. But 32, that's not enough. We're not going to sell you that. There is a little bit of a warning though. Like it's not something that you can buy, but I guarantee, and it won't be anyone here today, but I guarantee you can go out into the world and find people that will try to sell you DevOps. It's not something you can buy, it is something people will try to sell you. Next, DevOps is, this movement is focused on how we build and operate high velocity organizations. Build and operate. Dev and ops. Makes sense, right? But here's the thing. I think DevOps is a terrible word. Because when I say it, and when you hear it, even when I say it's to build and operate, you hear dev and ops. But if we want to build a high velocity organization, it takes more than just two departments within that organization to realize that dream. We all have to work together. Dev and Ops includes everyone within our organization, or DevOps includes everyone within our organization. And then finally, it's born from the experience of its practitioners. This is part of the reason why we struggle with the definition for DevOps. Because the DevOps that happens at Starbucks is different than the DevOps that happens at Booz Allen Hamilton, is different than the DevOps that happens at United Health Group. Each one of our DevOps experiences and the transformations that we're on are all unique to the work that we do and the teams that we're on and the customers that we're trying to serve. So this is my definition of DevOps. A cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experience of its practitioners. But for me, when we think about DevOps, when we think about building a high-velocity organization, the thing that we have to think about is our customer. Who is our customer? Now, oftentimes when I go out and I meet with IT people, I meet with people that are on this DevOps journey, and I ask, who is your customer? The answer I hear is the business. The business is my customer. I say that's bull. Sorry. The elementary school students normal? Can I hear you? Okay, good. The business is not your customer. What is the business of your business? Those are your customers. It is no longer our job to rack and stack servers. If you feel like that's your job, you're wrong. And not just because you moved to the cloud. Your job is to serve your customers. And DevOps is about having dev and ops working together to serve that customer. But again, it's not just dev and ops. It's sales, it's marketing, it's security, it's finance, it's the people team or the HR team, whatever you call them. All of these are important players in our DevOps journey. But we in IT might not be able to just serve our customers better. For example, today we're going to hear from Starbucks. If you work in IT in Starbucks, how do you make your customers happy? You make them a better latte? That's not what we get to do in IT. We don't get to directly interface and interact with our customers all the time. But we do have to measure how we get there. So the three things that I like to look at when we think about our DevOps journey and what are we trying to do are these three metrics: speed, efficiency, and risk. Now there's going to be a quiz at the end. Two of these should go up. One of them should go down. I'll leave it to you to figure out which is which. But when we think about speed, what are we talking about there? Speed might be our time from commit to deploy. When does the code go into the version control system? And then when is it ready and usable by our customers? But speed might also mean our deployment frequency. I know it's not a place where you live today, but I certainly have lived in a place in IT, we're building software, it's time to release the software. So you know what we do? We order custom apparel. Like custom t-shirts, custom hats, because we're gonna release the software. Because it's gonna be another 2 years before we release the software again, so we can get custom apparel. Imagine being in a place where you're shipping stuff 100 times a day, 10 times a day, 2 times a day. Can you get custom apparel in those scenarios? You can't, not for every release. Not for every release. There was also a customer that I was talking with very recently, specifically around the time from commit to deploy. And they told me, you know, we have a policy in our organization. And this policy states this: no code can go into the production environment until it has been in the version control system, like in the source code repository, for at least 24 hours. That's it. That's the entirety of that particular policy. Has to be in the code repository for 24 hours. Do you know why? Anyone have a guess?
Daily merges and continuous integration.
Daily merges and continuous integration? Maybe. What's that? Peer review? Yeah, but like, does peer review have to take 24 hours? Could we integrate faster than every 24 hours and test faster than every 24 hours? I have a question. How many of you are marathon runners? 10Ks? 5Ks? How many of you walk a mile? All right. Now, let's say that you're about to run a marathon, or for some of you, about to walk a mile. And it's the day before you're going to do that. You don't go and work out. Like, you got to rest. You got a carb load. This code is about to go into the production environment. For code that's like running a marathon, like all the users are gonna start using me, I gotta rest up. So if I just sit here for 24 hours and I get a little rest, I'll be ready to deal with those users when I go into production. It's a ridiculous policy. But we can all, like, if you think about it, like, try to unpack from whence did that policy come, right? There was something that they did, they pushed some code out, it caused some breakage, and then they kind of inspected, like, what happened? Oh, well, if only we'd waited a day. We don't have to do anything over that day, but if only we'd waited, that issue wouldn't have been there. Next up, efficiency. How do we talk about efficiency? So what's your change failure rate? When you push code into the production environment, how frequently does that cause a break? How frequently does that cause an incident? I will also tell you, again, a story from my past, not your past. I used to be the release manager at this particular organization that I worked. And we would do releases every 2 weeks, like clockwork, every 2 weeks. And part of my job, like we built a ton of ceremony around releasing software. Part of my job was every other Monday to come in and go through our subversion change log, pull together some release notes, and send them out to the entire company. And then notes said, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I'm going to come in and I'm going to push the green button, and I'm going to deploy that out. And what I didn't realize was as soon as I sent that email, there was an office pool every time that got started. And the office pool was, how long do you think it's going to be before he sends the email that says he rolled back all those changes? And so yes, we deployed regularly every 2 weeks. We also rolled back regularly every 2 weeks and then deployed again 3 days later. Like, that was our cadence. That is change failure rate. You push something into production, it fails. That's bad. That's bad. That is a drag on our efficiency because now we have to rework that stuff. How many of you plan to rework everything? Yeah, we don't do that. We can also look at our time to resolve issues. Okay, so we broke something. Maybe we rolled it back. It took us 3 days to fix it. Maybe there's an outage. Maybe an outage lasts an hour. Maybe an outage lasts 10 days. Maybe an outage takes your business offline and runs you out of business. We have to look at that. And then finally, risk. So how do we measure that? Our compliant audit frequency and our time deploying remediation. When things break, how quickly do we get a deploy out that fixes those things? How quickly are we, or how frequently are we assessing our policies in terms of security policies, compliance policies? How frequently are we assessing those? Is it only when the auditor's in the building? That's the only time you have to do it. But we need to be doing that more frequently, more regularly. So what happens when you take these three things, speed, efficiency, and risk, and you start to focus on them? Well, a lot of the things that happen in a lot of places I see is first, people hear DevOps, and there's this weird translation that happens. They hear the word DevOps, and by the time it hits their brain, what they hear is continuous delivery. We must move faster. And that's what DevOps is. If we move faster, we're good. So let's focus in on speed. But what happens if you focus in exclusively on speed is, yes, you might be moving faster, but you're also introducing a lot of drag on your efficiency. Maybe you have to roll back stuff. And in your quest to just move faster, you might be introducing a whole lot of risk into that environment. So that's not good. But on the other side of that coin, there are other organizations that are like, oh man, DevOps, that means continuous delivery, we gotta move fast. We're a bank, or we're a healthcare provider. What we need to do is move slow, because we're super risk averse. But actually, when you move slow, when you slow down and embrace the risk aversion, what happens is you don't know how to move fast. So what happens when there's a new CVE, or there's a new zero-day vulnerability? We have to patch all of our systems. Great, that'll take us 16 weeks to patch everything. It'll be fine. That's ridiculous. So with DevOps, we really have to look at how do we get all three of these together? By focusing in on, by looking at all three of these, we can improve all three of these metrics together. And in fact, if we focus in on one only, it will be to the detriment of the others. We absolutely have to think about all three. But how do we get there? It's not just with technology. Technology, of course, is going to help. But it's the culture that you have within your organization. For your culture reinforces and amplifies the technology choices that you make. In the same way that the technology choices that you make reinforce and amplify the culture that you have within your organization. One of the simplest demonstrations of this that I find to be mostly universal. Quick show of hands, how many of you use Git today? Keep them up for a second. Of those, how many of you previously used Subversion? A good most of you, right? Okay, you can put your hands down now. So think about the technical differences and the cultural differences between Git and Subversion. And let me just paint a picture. So you're using Subversion, you decide you're going to move to Git. Probably the first thing that you did organizationally was say, okay, well, what will our branching strategy be? And do you know what your branching strategy was? The exact same it was when you were using Subversion. And there, all you did was you changed the technology, but you didn't change the workflow. You didn't change the way that your culture worked. Eventually, hopefully, you embraced Git, and you changed how you worked. You understood that Git meant we have better trust. We're giving everyone the repository. We're changing how we work. We have very cheap branches. We can move much faster. But it only works when you think about both the cultural changes and the technology changes that go along together. And so if we're measuring speed, efficiency, and risk, we're looking at some of those technical capabilities. How do we measure our culture? And how does our culture impact those? The easiest way to measure your culture is to go and ask the people on your team. And I recommend that you run a regular survey, maybe quarterly, and maybe you keep these questions top of mind throughout the quarter, all the time. On my team, information is actively sought. Failures are learning opportunities, and messengers of them are not punished. When you ask these questions of your team, what you can do is you can take your culture, you can take the way information flows through your organization, and you can map it into this topology of organizational cultures. This is from a sociologist named Ron Westrom. He's done a ton of research in this, and we get to talk about it now. So what type of organization do you work in? Do you work in a pathological organization, or do you work in a generative organization? And there's always chuckles with this pathological. Like, how many of us want to work in a pathological organization? Ooh, me. Like, maybe if you're at the top and it's power-oriented, but even then, no. Look, you can build successful companies across all three of these. There are power-oriented or pathological companies that are successful by some measure of success. In DevOps, though, we tend towards this generative side, towards performance-oriented. And what are some of the practices that get us there? First, incentives and objectives are aligned. I mentioned that your HR team or your people team is part of DevOps. Think about how you're incenting and providing objectives for your employees. How many of you are in a bonus plan? Right? Does your bonus plan look at you, or does it look at the output of the entire organization? Let me give you a really simple example that has nothing to do with technology. Early on in my career, I was working at a software company. We had the opportunity to go and talk to a CPG, a consumer packaged goods company. One of the goods that this company created was breakfast cereal. You all know what breakfast cereal is, right? Yeah. So we met with the inventory manager and said, hey, what do your objectives look like? Inventory manager told us, you know, me and my team, we get paid when there's low inventory. Everything is just in time. We're flowing through the system. Then we went and we talked to the plant manager and said, how does your team, what does your bonus structure look like? Said, we get paid based on the tonnage of cereal that we produce. Tonnage of cereal we produce each quarter. So, last 2 weeks of the quarter, that plant manager has a choice. Rice Krispies or Raisin Bran? What do you think they made? Last 2 weeks of the quarter, we make Raisin Bran all the time. We get paid. Inventory manager, they might not hit a bonus this quarter, but we got paid. That's just like Dev and Ops fighting against each other. It's just like everything that we do. We have to step back and look at the entire system. Are our objectives set up properly? Are we incentivizing the right behavior, promoting the right behavior? Because if we're not, that's where we need to fix. We also, how many of you feel like you have too much work to do? You can't get it all done. You all should raise your hand, especially if the boss is here. You need more help, right? Yeah, raise them both. How do we get out of this? We have to visualize the work. We use Kanban boards as a process, as a practice, so that we can visualize the work and we can limit the work in process. We want to be able to see the entire flow. How does something move from the laptop all the way through to the production system? And what are we doing to optimize that entire flow? We have to treat failures as an opportunity to learn. We have to treat failures as an opportunity to learn. This failure is, for me, it's one of the best things that we have. I love to get up every day and fail. Y'all feel the same way? Yeah. The reason I love it is because it gives us that opportunity to learn. There's a lot of research done in this area. Think about how you do your postmortems. What can you learn better from failure? How do you embrace that? How do you get your executives on board with embracing failure? That can be tough too. Executives are especially prone to overestimating their progress when compared to those who are actually doing the work. How about that? How many of you feel like, yep, those are my executives? For sure, yeah. If your executives here, don't raise your hand. We know, we know. But hey, the same is true. Look, you can overestimate or underestimate your own work as well. You have to believe in yourself. So how do we get there? Let's talk about some quick capabilities to drive improvement across your organization. So how many of you have read the book Accelerate? All right. The State of DevOps report, how many have seen that? Yeah, all right. So the same authors that wrote the State of DevOps report, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, Jez Humble, and Gene Kim, they wrote a book that brings together their research into this book called Accelerate. And in that book, they identify 24 capabilities that will drive improvement. Continuous delivery capabilities, there's a list of them here. Architectural capabilities, product and process capabilities. You have to start looking at, inspecting, and asking your teams, how do we fall within these capabilities? Do we have these capabilities in-house? Which of these capabilities do we need to practice? Do we need to put into work? There are lean management and monitoring capabilities. DevOps looks to lean manufacturing and brings a lot of practices into the work that we do every day. And of course, there are cultural capabilities as well. Of course, I don't have time to go over all of these capabilities. You should read the book, though. It's an amazing book, backed up with all kinds of data as well. What I would like to do, though, is I'd like to invite my friend Magnus to come up to the stage for me. Let's have a round of applause for Magnus. All right, so first, hug ops is a real thing, and you should always get permission before you give someone else a hug. But Magnus and I know each other well. Do you see how he said hug ops and he went like that? I could have said, yes, hug ops, like that, and then no hug would have happened, but that's not who I am either. So here's the thing, as Nirmal mentioned when he was introducing me, he said this was my 49th talk this year. The way that you do DevOps is you do it. You don't talk about it. You don't think about it. The way to get into a DevOps state of mind is to get out and do the work. I don't do the work, I just talk. So I wanted to bring along a friend to help us all get into a DevOps state of mind. So Magnus, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Magnus Hedemark. I'm the Director of Software Engineering at Optum, which is part of the United Health Group. We're probably the biggest technology company you've never heard of.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. And you're local, right?
Yeah, we're local. Actually, we've got offices around the world, but we've got a big presence in Raleigh, right at North Hills in the Bank of America building. We've got 4 floors there.
All right. So Magnus recently took on a new role at UHG. Can you tell us first, Magnus, about your previous role? What were you doing before?
Sure. I didn't even want to work for a healthcare company. They actually pulled me away from Bronto. So you local folks probably know Bronto. They lured me away from Bronto and really said, this DevOps thing that you're doing, that you're doing with Triangle DevOps and so on, we want some of that here. So will you lead a coaching organization for us? So for the first 2 years, I led a DevOps coaching organization, and I found, I'm kind of losing my street cred here. Every single day, I would have a 1-hour meeting with some executive and go over, what is DevOps? Like, what is DevOps? And it was like Groundhog Day, the same thing every day. It's the first day of DevOps over and over every day. And I had no skin in the game.
Right.
So I found the most dirty, unloved, crusty, old middleware program that everything in the company touches and everything depends on. And I went to the executive that leads that program, who thankfully is like a DevOps superstar herself, and said, Heather, I'd like a piece of this. And she moved me in. So for the last 3 months, I've been leading this program.
And what sort of infrastructure? It's all cloud-based infrastructure, because you said DevOps. So what's all the cloud-based infrastructure?
No. So we've got hundreds of old bare metal servers that are incredibly underutilized because everybody's so afraid of what will happen if a server breaks. And these servers, by the way, the vendor stopped selling replacement parts for them over 3 years ago. I've also got mainframe components. I've also got IBM iSeries components, and AIX as well.
All right. Wow. So how do you go into this team that's running on mainframe and bare metal? And I'd imagine that the people that are on this team have been there for a long, long time.
This team has been around for 30 years. I've got quite a number of people that are like in the fast lane for retirement within the next 5 years.
Right.
And like, can you imagine the tech debt of a 30-year-old team in a healthcare company?
Yeah.
I got my hands.
Okay, so you go in and you're like, we're going to do the DevOps. What does that even look like, Magnus?
So it's not all about throwing tools at the problem at first. Actually, there was no action taken at first. I had the benefit of being able to observe the team from the outside for about 2 months before I took the role. Once I moved in, I was able to act on those observations, and most of what I was hearing was, we're overworked, we're stressed out, the company keeps pushing more and more deadlines on us, and we have to start working on it, but we don't have to finish. We have to start working on it, or we're in big trouble. So I asked them, show me where you're tracking your work, and they couldn't show me. I had a project manager that had her eyes on about 1/3 of the project work that was going on, and she had an Excel spreadsheet. She was like the keeper of secret knowledge. So I got rid of all of that. I took the project manager, I took the whole team, we went to Kanban training together for 2 days. We all got our KMP certifications, and we had a quick bake-off between all these different Kanban tools and settled on one. Moved all of our work on Kanban together. And now we can see just how overworked everybody is. Where every person on the team has like 15 items in process at the same time.
Right.
Starting everything, finishing nothing.
Yeah. And you picked a tool, if I remember correctly, because your team is super distributed as well, right?
That's right, we're spread out over 3 continents around the world.
Yeah, so a wall with stickies wouldn't work.
Wall with stickies wouldn't work, although I've worked like that before. If you're all in one place, you don't need anything more sophisticated than that.
Awesome. Let's hear it from Magnus. Thanks for sharing. Super great. So listen, this is the thing that I want you to take away today. The microphone, normal. The thing I want you to take away is that your company needs you more than ever. In this room, we are changing the way our organizations work. It is up to us, and more importantly, it's up to you. There's no one coming to save you. You are the ones that are responsible for making your organization successful and for building that high velocity organization. Not only do they need you, they need the most ambitious version of you. Show up for work caring about your customers every single day. Bring the most ambitious version of yourself. And the other thing I want to leave you with is that the things that we do today are not going to be the same things that we do in the future. Just like the things that we did in the past are not what we're doing today. In 1998, we told people, do not get in strangers' cars, do not meet people in the internet. I pushed a button on my phone this morning, got in a stranger's car, and came here. The technology that we're working on and the ways that we're working on them today are going to help us get better. But the way that we're working today, we have to continually learn, continually improve, so that we can do the right things tomorrow. The other really key thing is look around you. You are in your community of peers. You have an incredible opportunity today to meet people, to talk about topics that you want to talk about. Think about what questions you have. What would you like to talk about during the open spaces? Put them on the board. And support one another. We're all here to help each other get better. Thank you very much.